Hi guys, it's Sarah again. I'm continuing responses to a recent AMA I posted on Reddit. So Heaven Builder asked thoughts on Yuri113 asked, how hard was it getting a return offer to Google? So I'm not sure if you're talking about an internship or a full-time offer, so I'll just quickly go over both. An internship, like a return internship, is I would say it's not super complicated or difficult as long as you make a point to get your work done. That you get your work done. The truth is, like, you can show up every day for work, and yeah, Google is a lot about learning. They want you to learn a lot, but they also really value results. And so I would say my internships at Microsoft, it was a lot more about, like, your manager was a lot more responsible for if you got a full-time return offer. So if they saw you were working really hard and maybe things just came up that were out of your control, you could probably still get a return offer and like you'd be fine because they knew the situation. Google's a little different because you go to a hiring committee, and they do that to make the process very unbiased, but that also makes it a lot harder to get a return offer, especially if you don't have results to show for your summer, even if you had good reasons for those, like the lack of results. So maybe something went really wrong in your project and like there was a lot of backtracking and everything. All that to say, like, your manager can recommend hire, and that doesn't mean you'll get a return offer or a full-time offer. So I just worked really hard to make sure that the hiring committee would absolutely not have a reason to say no to giving me a return offer. And that means that even though some of my managers were like, you're doing fine, you don't need to worry, like, you're okay, you're on the right track, I really was like of the mentality, well, you can say hire me, but that doesn't mean they will. And just because you're telling them to hire me, doesn't mean they'll hire me. So I want to make sure that the hiring committee, even if they've never met me, when they're looking at my work, will go, there's absolutely no reason we would want this person to go to another company. We want them to stay here because they did great work this summer. So they will look at your code. They will look at your pull requests, which are called, they're not called pull requests at Google. I'm just using that term because people usually know what that means. They're called CLs, change lists. So anyway, they look at all the code you've written that summer. They look at like what your goal was for the summer. Did you accomplish your goal? What impact did you have? You will write out like a full detailed report at the end of your internship about the work you did. Your managers will as well. Last year, things actually changed a decent amount. So they used to be much more, they used to really require usually additional interviews, sometimes for internships to come back as a software, like as a SWE intern if you did the STEP internship. But then almost always for full-time offers, even if your manager recommended hire and you did a great job. Last summer, they finally decided we're going to make the process a little bit easier because I think for a long time the mentality was we would rather lose a good engineer than accidentally hire a bad one. So they were very, very strict on return offers. It was almost always required to do additional interviews, even if you had really a really good report from your manager and they were recommending hire. The exception was if you did a Google STEP internship and then you did a Google SWE internship and then we're trying to convert to full-time. Sometimes they didn't require additional interviews if your manager recommended hire and you had really good code. Last summer, I think they made a decent amount of changes to the hiring process for interns. I think just trying to make the process clearer and less difficult because they realized that for a while now they've been rejecting some interns who did really good jobs because they were required to do an additional interview and maybe didn't do so great on the additional interview for whatever reason. Maybe it was just they hadn't been practicing all summer because they've been working really hard all summer writing code, and writing software is not the same as practicing coding questions. So I would say they're not completely different skill sets, but they, even if you write a lot of software, I would encourage you to be doing specific coding interview questions, like practice if you're applying to new companies. Anyway, because an intern might have done a great job and might have actually been a great engineer, but maybe they didn't do so great on a one extra interview they had to do for a full-time offer, they sometimes would get rejected. And anyway, I think it's a really cool change, and I think it's about time. It didn't really affect me a lot because I had done a STEP internship, a SWE internship, and then I was converting, and I had a return offer from Microsoft at the same time. So they did not ask me to do an additional interview. I don't think I would have been asked regardless of if that change had or hadn't happened, though. Anyway, how hard is it to get a return offer? It's not that hard if you make a point to show up to work, learn a lot, and do a good job and write a lot of code. Google does treat interns like entry-level engineers. They expect you to get a lot done, and they expect you to really contribute. But they also expect your contribution to be according to the level of knowledge you have at the moment. So they're not expecting you to produce the same amount of work as an engineer, like an entry-level engineer there, but they are expecting you to produce like valuable work based on the level of like school you're in. So I would just say, like, honestly, like, intern events are great and fun, and I would go to a few. I tried to make friends with a lot of other interns. But at the end of the day, like, if I had a lot of meetings on my calendar, my question was, which ones will help me grow as an engineer and which ones are just fun? And sometimes, I wouldn't go to intern events because it was like, well, that's fun and that's great, but I care a lot more about getting a full-time offer and doing a great job. And I think some people maybe will think my approach and mentality is, like, too strict and too severe, but this is not to brag, but when I got my full-time offer, I had like high-level managers specifically requesting me by name to be on their team, and I had not been on their team previously. That's not very common. I was able to really negotiate my starting salary because I had so much demand to return to Google. And part of that is because I produced such significant results during my internship. I think, honestly, I don't know many interns who were able to accomplish the same amount I did. I'm sure there are some. I don't know of them. And that's not bragging. That's more of like, I worked probably 50 hours a week or more, and I did not do a lot of stuff that wasn't directly related to my project. But I was given, and also just a really cool opportunity. So that part was out of my control. I was given a really cool project to work on. So I would say that was just honestly like God's blessing, in my opinion, that just played a role in that part. But once I was given that really cool feature to work on, I made sure to actually get it done. And it was a lot of code. I wrote, several new files in several different languages, thousands of lines of code. And it was a full stack project. I was the only engineer on it. And my feature, when it was released, is being viewed by over 1 billion people monthly. So that's a huge number, and it's on Google's main search engine page. So Google has a lot of projects. Google Web Search GWIS is like the actual google.com page though. And my feature shows up on any travel related search within the first half of the first page on google.com, which means that it has a very high number of users. But like Google will not put something like that out. They won't move a feature like that into production unless it's actually the quality that they expect to see on that page. So there was a lot of meetings. There was a lot of bugs that we had to work through. Like even a small bug is unacceptable when you're putting a feature on GWIS. But I barely, by the end of my internship, managed to like fully complete the project, get it through bug bashes, get it approved, and start to get it into deployment. So I was extremely proud of that, but it was a lot of hard work. So I guess my full answer to that question, sorry, I sort of rambled, is just if you're willing to work really hard and you communicate regularly with your manager and reach out to other engineers, like your team is great, but there's no reason why you can't ask for help from other engineers if people on your team are busy. At the end of the day, like you are an adult and it's your responsibility to get your work done, not your manager's. And so if you're blocked by your manager not being available or your team not being available to help you, and you've done research and can't figure out the question yourself, go reach out to other teams near you, go reach out to other engineers near you. That's what you would be expected to do if you were a full-time engineer. So if you really want a full-time offer or a return internship offer, that's how you need to behave as an intern. They want to see that you'll be a great engineer, and the way you indicate that is by acting like you're already an engineer there. So just take ownership, take responsibility, and don't put the blame on other people if you don't get your work done. But yeah, you do that, you create a good project or you finish your project, you write good quality code, There's no reason why you shouldn't get a return offer.